And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to argue with you over Big Ten skill player rankings because you already told me you hated my list.
I didn't say I hated your list. I said
Yes,
you
you
were
did.
high on a guy. No, I did not. I said you were high on one guy that's on your list at the current moment, which you are.
I won't reveal who it is, but when I was putting this together, I was actually pleasantly surprised, Blake, by like how many quality, high impact players were in the Big Ten. Like I feel like yesterday's list, we were talking about a lot of young dudes that were up and comers. There was a lot of projection that was coming into it. We had some transfers we discussed. There are a lot of names that could have been in this conversation. There's like 10, 15 guys deep that we maybe not 15, but like 10 guys deep that could have made the argument for being in that 5 slot or just being on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, there are a lot of people. I mean, we probably agree on 3 out of the 5, 3 and 4 we're going to disagree on our list here. But there are a lot of skill players returning to the Big Ten. I see Gavin inside the chat saying, bro, Jeremiah Smith ain't even like that. He had one good year and he was 19. Ryan Williams did it and he was 17.
I hope that's in jest.
I mean, number one, it probably is. I think it's pretty inevitable about who that will be. I do think that there's a lot to be asked and questioned when you get to 3, 4, and 5. A lot of guys with a lot like last night in a lot of ways with the SEC, a lot of potential, but not maybe a lot of things have been shown necessarily when it comes to actual production.
Yeah, there's a little bit that I think needs to be proven, but it's crazy to consider that Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton, and Jonah Coleman all were roughly 1,000-yard rushers this past year. I don't think any other conference that we're going to be able to say that they have 3 returning running backs with that much rushing production. That's what's kind of one of the craziest parts about this. And then, we've got the freak who's leading the list, and Jeremiah Smith, who I'm excited to dive in on because there are some hyperbolic takes that we can have, and I'm all for being as hyperbolic and as ridiculous as possible when talking about Jeremiah Smith.
Well, look, I mean, I went through it today. I mean, there's even running backs. Ohio State got a transfer out of West Virginia. They have 2 backs that will go into the NFL draft with Henderson and Judkins. He did, we got a lot to discuss. I mean, but you do have guys like Mekhi Hughes that from Tulane that went to Oregon, guys that are newcomers that may make this list as well. I don't think you can be wrong in who you have in 3 through 5. I do think that you could be wrong in if you have anyone else besides 1 and 2 not being Smith and Singleton. So we'll discuss that. Joe, right. That's what we will discuss tonight. There's no real other news other than that. Other than I will say this, I am really intrigued. The Big Ten and the SEC are supposed to meet at the end of March at sometime here. I would think sometime within the week. What is interesting that I want to bring up, since we did talk about the SEC and the Big Ten, could be a finalized decision here, Joe, that the Big Ten and the SEC joined forces, which I do think would make a very interesting thing for the sport here.
It could all end up just being a bunch of nothing because they've met.
They're too far in it
times.
They're too far in.
Part of me, yes, obviously they're embedded in this whole process and they've been communicating with one another, but there's a lot of egos at play. There's also a lot of cataclysmic outcomes that can come from this. So this could just end up being as what it's been so far, which is them communicating with one another in order to maintain control, but as separate entities.
I'm also going to be
curious to come out of it, though.
I'm going to be very intrigued in the SEC as an example. Let me throw this your way. I do think some SEC teams are going to be exempt from this Big Ten situation. You're going to ask South Carolina to play a Big Ten team in the beginning and then play South Carolina at the end. Are you going to ask Florida to play Miami, Florida State, and a Big Ten team and have that would be ridiculous if you did that. And then are you going to ask Georgia Tech, and I mean Georgia, who also plays Georgia Tech at the end of the year, are you going to ask them to play a Big Ten team at the beginning of the year, which also I think it will be something interesting here.
Well, here's a stipulation, though, that if there's an unexpected outcome that comes out of this, what if part of that scheduling agreement between the Big Ten and the SEC requires teams like Florida and South Carolina to cancel their games, their historic rivalries with teams in the ACC?
And I would not do the deal.
Well, I mean, with the dollars that are being constantly thrown around and now revenue sharing being in the mix, I kind of would think that the Big Ten and the SEC, that Sankey
but the
and
players don't have
would say F it.
Well, here's the thing, though. The problem with that is that they're still making the same money. They don't get extra money because of them not playing Clemson or playing the Big Ten. They would share the revenue.
Yes.
The bigger hurdle is going to be which games will be on which networks. I think more than anything.
Well, but that's my point, is that there's now going to be extra premier games that are being scheduled. Like these games are going to get extra attention. There's probably a capable addition or change to the broadcasting deal. I would imagine that they wouldn't take on this new head-to-head conference challenge without some sort of communication with the broadcasting networks, or a broadcasting network that has already said, we want to broadcast these games specifically. We will give you X amount of dollars. There are so many layers that we, as just general commentators on this, we're not going to be privy to. Like, we're just not going to have exposure to the real back end shit, because there's just there's so many layers for all this. Like we're talking about right now that can be affecting the outcome of all these meetings.
Very true. Here's the truth. I would be pissed if I'm Florida, or if I'm Clemson, or if I'm Florida State, and you're taking a rivalry because of money when I don't have that decision. What gives you the right to make the decision for who I play out of conference? By the way, the SEC cannot dictate, for what it's worth, and Big Ten either. Can the Big Ten and SEC dictate who you play outside of conference?
No, not technically. No. Well,
no, they can't.
That's a great question. I actually legitimately don't know if they're capable of dictating.
No, I mean, well, think about this. Teams make their schedule outside of the SEC schedule. So,
yeah, but what about like in basketball, where there's the conference challenges that occur at the beginning of the season?
It's not a mandate. It's not a mandate. Those teams accept an invitation to go and play in those things. It's not a mandate.
I think you're right.
No, I'm telling you, I know for a fact it's not mandatory. I mean, look at Kentucky doesn't do them. But what Kentucky does is, in the beginning of the year, they go and play like Michigan State, like they did this year. I think didn't they play UConn in the beginning of the year? Like, they don't do them.
I mean, somebody else as well. I'm forgetting.
Right. I mean, again, I mean, you're getting into the weeds. It will be the main point here is it will be interesting to see how that goes. Like, it's going to be very interesting.
Right. This is my whole talking point with this, is that, like, there are so many moving parts that are happening behind closed doors that we don't even fully know what those conversations are. So there is capably an outcome here that nobody's considering, that only reporters close to the situation and Sankey and Petiti and those that are the shareholders in these meetings, they're the only ones who are going to know. There could be some crazy shit on the table that we're never going to be aware of. That's how massive this is.
I'm just going to say this. We're giving 3 men, one that will be unnamed, or 4 men. CBS, ESPN, Greg Sankey, and Tony Petiti, we're allowing them to run college football whether we like it or not. So those
it's been that way for the last 4 years.
Well, what have they done?
Well,
I mean, Tony Petiti did not do it. Well, Tony Petiti didn't do it. I mean, the networks basically did it. If we're just being frank, I mean,
right.
I think that they're just whipping boys for the overall dollar.
Well, they've been compliant in all the moves though. So, like, they've had to have been agreeing.
Really,
sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Let's get to this very quickly before we get to our Big Ten things here. Ron Rivera, the former head coach, former player in the NFL, is going to be the GM of Cal. Joe, a lot of these teams are going to GMs. A couple of big splashes, like Jim Nagy going to Oklahoma. And then now you have Ron Rivera going to be the GM of Cal. I guess your thought of Ron Rivera, which is a big splash. They made a big splash getting Brian Harsin. I say it's a big splash, but it's a big name, I guess you could say, coming from the Auburn head coaching job. But Ron Rivera, the GM of Cal, your thoughts on that?
I think what's been really interesting since the introduction of these GM positions, Blake, is that there have been massive names that have taken these roles with various schools. Like if anyone's been tracking college basketball, Steph Curry took the assistant GM job at Davidson. I mentioned this to bring up, I have no idea what the role actually means. I think that there are certain circumstances where it's very clear cut. These are contract negotiations. These are roles that are handling the salary cap, all of the important things moving forward. But Steph Curry's not handling any of that. Steph Curry is just somebody who shows up maybe on some of the recruiting visits to shake some hands and say, hey, come play here. I have a role in this. Maybe he doesn't actually do anything. I wonder if Ron Rivera is going to be more focused as an evaluator. I would point to the fact that his Panthers teams and his Commanders teams, they had some very talented players. They had some really good roster development. I think of the linebacking core that they had, Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly for that period of time. Cal, under their current coaching staff, has been more competitive than they've ever been. So there's a possibility that you throw Ron Rivera in the mix and they could have some more talent. I mean, heck, they've recruited well. They've had Jaden Ott. They had at running back, they had Fernando Mendoza, who they just lost. They've found some diamonds in the rough, and maybe they find some more with Rivera here. But there's capably not much that they're going to do other than be a little bit over 500.
Yeah, I mean, good for you. Good for Ron to be back in the sport. Joe, these listen, it'd be one thing if you had a draft where you're drafting these kids, considering it comes down to the almighty dollar in most of these situations. I don't think it matters anymore. I think it could matter from an evaluation standpoint in reference to some of these lower tier guys that maybe people aren't fighting money over. But I still – like Jim Nagy. Jim Nagy means absolutely nothing when it comes to one of these 5-star kids that you're going after. Everybody knows he's good. What is Jim Nagy going to do in reference to you're going to just spend more money? You're already doing that. Like, I mean, GMs for me are money raisers. They're not. They can be evaluators, and Jim may be one of them. Ron Rivera may be one of them. But, Joe, I mean, again – I don't understand the concept here. Everybody knows who's good. Everybody knows where you're going after and who you're going after. You do have to have a lot of cohesiveness inside the staff, and it's going to be interesting to see if Ron Rivera can do that. That's the bigger thing for me. All right.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to add to this is that I think that the best GMs or the smallest names are the ones that are actually going and finding the quality talent, like Chad Bowden, who left Notre Dame.
Who's the GM at Ole Miss?
I couldn't tell you.
That's my point exactly. Who's the GM?
Wait. Isn't it the guy that's got the really funny name? Wait a minute.
No, it's not.
Wait.
I mean, at least I don't think it's funny. Who's the GM at Bama? Ohio State.
I couldn't tell you who some of these guys are.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the only point that I'm trying to make. You don't know who they are. They still recruit at the top of the top.
No, it is. Ole Miss is the guy who has the funny name.
What?
Billy Glasscock.
Oh, you think that's funny?
His name's Glasscock, Blake. Are you kidding me? Are you gonna tell me that's not the funniest GM name in college football? When he got hired, everybody was tweeting about this because his name is Glasscock.
Because he's a Glasscock?
Well, he's a great GM, but he also happens to have the name Glasscock.
He can't help that.
I mean, like it couldn't be any more to the point. It's literally spelled as it sounds. There's no like, oh, it's spelled a little differently. No, it's Glasscock. It couldn't be any more.
And you get on me for being perverted on some of these shows. It's being perverted.
There's no perversion. I am merely just pointing out.
I'm sure Glasscock.
What his name is.
I'm sure Glasscock's pointing some things out too. All right. Let's get to the break here. Everybody do us a favor. Hit the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages, you're watching this, listening to us on YouTube or Rumble. Like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, let's talk about it. Joe, we continue on our path of doing quarterbacks and skill players, and I'm sure we'll get to defenders. But in all these P4 conferences, tonight we go to the Big Ten. Our top 5 skill players in the Big Ten. Starting off with you, who do you have?
My number 1, of course, it's Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State wide receiver. Number 2, Nick Singleton from Penn State, the running back. Number 3, Evan Stewart, Oregon wide receiver. Number 4, Jonah Coleman, Washington running back. And then lastly, Carnell Tate, the other Ohio State wide receiver.
I'm glad to see that you and I have 1, 2, and 3 the same, as I have number 1, Jeremiah Smith, number 2, Nick Singleton. Number 3, I'm going to go with Elijah Surratt out of Indiana, the wide receiver who had a big year for them. And then I'm going to go a little bit different here for you. At number 4, the Tulane transfer, the now new Oregon running back, Mekhi Hughes. I will go at number 4. And number 5, I will be with you there with Carnell Tate. Let's start off with the inevitable, as we always do. As it seems like every time we talk about one of these lists, we always have at number 1 somebody who will be inevitable here. But the best overall skill player in the Big Ten, without a doubt, Jeremiah Smith. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised here. There's literally no debate. One could even argue that Jeremiah Smith is the greatest player in the country, which I would firmly agree with. The fact that this kid is a true freshman, was called upon in a national championship game to make the most important play of the season the way that he did, and he succeeded confidently, clearly, as easily as he possibly could have, I think is enough evidence that Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country. I think the scariest part to consider, even though he already looks like he's 25 years old, is that he could get bigger, faster, and stronger. He can continue to develop his footwork and his nuance and become an overall better receiver instead of just being a great athlete. A couple games where he got taken out of those games because defenses were so desperate to slow him down. I think Jeremiah Smith's impact is only going to get bigger and bigger. Anyone who is against Jeremiah Smith is a hack. And it's like, seriously, you can't doubt this kid because there has been nothing but amazing evidence so far.
I'm going to push back on you on one thing. I do think his production can fall. When you're going to a first-time starting quarterback, I do think that you can have situations. By the way, you have a new offensive coordinator and a new DC with a lot of turnover and a lot of different situations. Just because his production could go down, which I think that it can. Joe, you're talking about 16 total touchdowns, over 1,300 total yards, pushing 1,400 total yards, 13 of it coming from receiving. Listen, I'm with you on, I do think he's the best non-quarterback player in the game. I do think that is inevitable. I do think we have to have a conversation about how good of a talent he is versus what we do believe that his production could be going inside of 2025. I do think it drops, okay, because I do still believe overall as a team that they have some stuff to figure out. But what are we talking about? 5% drop-off, 2% drop-off? I don't think it's immense. The kid almost had 20 touchdowns. I mean, he's 4 away from having 20 touchdowns on the entire season. The production, and by the way, being an option early in the season where people say, well, he wasn't our number 2. He was, because Emeka Egbuka and him had the same amount of receptions going into the national title game. Like, it was 1A, 1B for whatever it's worth. I still do I agree with you. I think from a physical standpoint, from an overall athletic standpoint, he reminds me of Julio. He reminds me of Julio.
He's built like him. He's built like him.
I think that is the best comp that you can make. Julio also was not in a passing style offense like this one can be. Again, he could be the best player in the country, and I still think he's the best player in the country, non-quarterback. It will be interesting to see them this year offensively. Now, can Carnell Tate, who's also at number 5 on our list and we'll get to, can he take that next step to take some pressure off of Jeremiah Smith? But I do think that the teams are going to force you to throw the ball to other guys like they did in the national title game and like they did against Texas. Make Carnell Tate beat you, which, by the way, Carnell Tate did beat you in some instances. I think that's how you attack it. But I agree with you. Speed, size, strength, hand. The kid has it all. He is what, we call these kids in baseball 5-tool players. He does, at a wide receiver position, he does all 5 things well. Speed, size, height, strength. He has agility. He has all of it. None bigger for me. I know you talked about that Notre Dame play at the end, the long fade down the right sideline. That it wasn't even the most gross play for me because he's beating a dude in single coverage, no a free high. The more crazy play for me was when they played Oregon again, and he goes up in double coverage and he's absolutely going off against Oregon, and that was a part of them whipping that ass. The kid is absolutely insane, and I do think he's the best non-quarterback in the country.
I think the thing that you just brought up about his skill set is the craziest part about talking about him, because a lot of times receivers, they play specific roles. There's 3 different roles that you see receivers play: X, Z, play in the slot.
He can do all 3.
Right, he can do all 3. Different body types, different athletic traits, really end up determining how you're going to be playing within an offense. The craziest thing about him is that he literally checks every single box. Like, he is going to be extremely fast in the NFL Combine. He's almost he's basically Calvin Johnson. That's kind of maybe not. It's not as big as Calvin Johnson, but when Julio came
Julio's the comp for him.
It is. But the reason why we're talking about all these guys is that they all did everything well, and they were enormous. They were big, strong, physical, had reliable hands, good route runners, and could separate over the top. That is why he's so rare, and that's why he was able to step in and have 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. Here's my only thing, though. I understand your take on his production possibly dropping. I'd flip it back on you, though. Last year, Jeremiah Smith was the number 1 option, but did not need to be, because they had Trevion Henderson, they had Quinshon Judkins, they had Emeka Buka, and they had Carnell Tate, who they did get production out of. This upcoming year, you have a new quarterback. You are a lot more depleted with options. You have to, and you also have the wide receivers coach who's calling plays in Brian Hartline. So you're now in this position where, so we think, you need to rely on Jeremiah Smith in order to produce success. Because I don't know right now who for certain is going to be those next big options outside of Carnell Tate.
All right, I'm still going to stay there because listen. Pre-Kelly, what did they do? They would try to run the ball and slow things down. They try to play moderate, good defensive games, and they would slow things down. They're going to have to slow things down and run the football with a new quarterback. Listen, I know that you don't like Will Howard. I know you don't like him. There's a difference of what I think the level of play that you got from him late in the season versus what you can get early. I mean, Joe, you saw a first-time quarterback with Marvin Harrison Jr. in his last year. And what did that beginning of the season production look like? It took a dip. That's not a shot at Jeremiah Smith. What it's a shot at is, Joe, again, the only thing that I could think is maybe they're seeing so much action offensively because you have a new defensive line, you have a new defensive coordinator, so many things that you're trying to replace, and you just get the ball a lot and you're playing shootouts and you're trying to throw the ball all over the place. Maybe that does happen. But I'm always cautious when a kid wins a national title, is the best freshman in the country, he has a new starting quarterback, 4 different offensive linemen, 2 new running backs. Oh, by the way, your 1B or 1A, whatever you wanted to call Emeka Buka, is gone. Does Carnell Tate take a step up? Joe, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's Ohio State, Alabama, whoever it is. That is let me just say it like this before Ohio State fans try to kill me.
They're going to get mad at you.
Well, okay. You can't be mad because that shit happened to Saban. And Saban was the best ever. So if it happened to his teams, why do you think that it doesn't happen to you? Now, that's not to say that it will happen to you. There are exceptions to every single rule here. But, Joe, just because one season teaches me something doesn't mean that I have to take it as the norm. Again, what is a drop in production? Joe, listen, there could be a very clear instance where they don't play an extra 4 games or 3 games, and they don't get back to a national title.
Which they probably won't.
They probably won't. So, again, production can come down from less games. It also could come down to, Joe, and I'm just being honest, how does your young quarterback look early even though I had Julian saying in my top 5. I know we're kind of playing hypothetical here, but it's just the truth.
Here's I just don't agree with this. I think that you've got a guy who steps right in immediately, has an immediate impact. That is a clear indication that the kid's just a natural gifted player. You give him another additional offseason to really take that step forward. I think that like we saw this season where he had a couple of instances where his production, where he was completely game planned around. The Texas game was a really good example of this, where the Michigan game, he didn't have his normal production. The Indiana game, he only had 3 receptions for 34 yards. There was a lot of preparation and due diligence from opposing defenses of taking him out of the game plan. And I think that that's not going to change. But I think when you're a true freshman, there's a big difference in how easily you're taken out of a game and the impact that you have now that you've been more established and you've been around a football program for longer. I don't think that that's going to happen as frequently. This kid is too much of an anomaly. He is a rarity.
Oh, just because it's an anomaly and all of that, when Julio went through a new quarterback, his production dropped. It's a fact. It's not like we're not. It's a fact. Actually, I probably should look up Julio's production. Watch him go stupid. Look it up. All right. Can we go to number 2 while you look it up?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Joe, at number 2, we both have Nick Singleton, the Penn State running back, coming back for his final season. We have him at 2 as the best skill player in the Big Ten. Your thoughts while you look up this Julio thing?
Well, I didn't have that looked up. Wait 1 second. Okay. I'm not going to end up pulling it up. To get to Nick Singleton, if Jeremiah Smith didn't exist, we would be talking about Nick Singleton as the best player in the conference.
I agree.
If he wasn't splitting carries with Kaytron Allen, I wonder how much crazier his production would have been outside of the 1,100 yards that he almost ran for. He had 1099, 12 touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. Watching the Fiesta Bowl, or sorry, the Orange Bowl in person, I don't think that I've ever seen a running back take over a game the way that he did. And it's crazy to me that they didn't try more aggressively to keep giving him the football, because Notre Dame, frankly, did not have an answer. They did not have a way to slow him down. From a height, weight, speed, explosiveness standpoint, he is one of the most explosive and talented running backs in the country. I'm glad that he went back, because I think one of his biggest weaknesses was just needing to improve his vision, because he doesn't have a lot of carries under his belt, because he's been splitting carries with Kaytron Allen his whole career. He is so dominant, and I hope that Kotelnicki starts to let him take over more and more, because a lot of their success this season was the result of him getting to be the premier guy on this team.
The interesting thing is we look at the carries and forget that he had 41 receptions in 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, we forget you talk about that Orange Bowl. What moved the ball against Notre Dame? They kept throwing them the ball in the flat. He kept abusing Notre Dame. If they would have kept going back to it, they might have won that damn game, if we're just being frank, because they couldn't stop it. Joe, he is an overall well-rounded back. I do think pass protection needs to get a little bit better for what it's worth. Joe, you don't know what he's going to do. He can run in between the tackles. He can catch it out of the backfield. He's a really good route runner. They get him out in space a lot. For what it's worth, I do think he's probably and arguably the best running back in the country. I can see that argument. I can make that argument.
I think that argument's very fair. I don't think there's anybody else who tops it.
I mean, running back is a position that some kid out of nowhere can come out of nowhere and do something stupid. So I don't want to say that yet.
Actually, wait, Jeremiah Love. Actually, I forgot. Jeremiah Love, I would put ahead of him.
I got to be honest with you. I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Okay. Well,
do you want to know why?
Why?
Because in that exact game, one took over and the other didn't.
Jeremiah Love had one of the most important touchdowns. He was also playing with an injured knee. Come on, man. That's not.
He had a long run against Indiana and then got shut down. He had a long run against Penn State and got shut down.
He was sick against Indiana.
Oh, we're just going to keep making excuses.
Up his knee.
All right.
Well, injury and sickness are not important when talking about a guy's performance. Okay,
everybody's injured. But in reference to him, I can't even keep a straight face trying to argue with you about this. In reference,
I'm definitely going to disagree with you if you're going to say that. But go ahead, continue.
He did have 210 touches a year ago, plus.
Yes.
Okay, he had 17 total touchdowns. The way that he's utilized while being part-time is insanity. Here's the thing, though. You got to help him out in reference to getting those safeties out of the box. And that is a truth. That is a reality. That is not something that I think that we look here and say to ourselves is like he was their offense a year ago. He was. And if they want to take a next step, and if he explodes here, it's because they took a next step as a team. They need to get him some help. But, man, I'll be honest with you. I'm actually shocked that he returned. I thought he could have gone and been one of the best backs in the draft. I know that you do a lot of draft stuff, and there's a lot of running backs in this class. But nobody overall as a back did more than him in a really elite conference.
He was best off going back to school because he probably would have slid to the third, fourth round because there's just so many running backs in this class. So Marion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty and Trevion Henderson are kind of leading the pack right
Sampson, now. That running back room is
Singleton. Sampson's not going till late day 3. I'm not going to argue with that about that.
Wait,
the deal
what?
He's like at the back end of the running back class. I watched his tape. I was kind of disappointed. He runs really fast and has a lot of wide open rushing lanes.
Or is that what actually is going to happen?
That's also what actually is going to happen. Most people think.
Okay, I'll make a bet with you that's not going to happen, but continue.
Okay. Singleton was really important for Penn State's success this last year. And Tyler Warren obviously was like the main go-to guy. They needed Singleton, though, or a lot of times Singleton was like the producer of big splash plays in the run game. Kaytron Allen had some big runs, but he is not nearly as fast and as explosive as Singleton is. He is more of a grinder. He's going to grind you out in short area. They play off of one another really, 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 really well. I think that Nick Singleton, though, for this upcoming season, knowing the lack of impact that they're probably going to have in the passing game, knowing that there's really still not great receiving options and Tyler Warren's gone, they're going to need him to take another step forward. And I would feel pretty confident in Nick Singleton that he can take that step forward because he's one of these rare dudes that is just a freakish athlete.
He is a freak athlete, man. I mean, look, what he did in the playoffs in that Notre Dame game especially, I mean, he was really explosive. I mean, he was their offense a year ago and got him to the Final Four. I do think that he is the one of, if not the best running back in the entire country. All right. Joe, at number 3, you have Evan Stewart, the wide receiver out of Oregon, and I have Elijah Surratt, the Indiana wide receiver.
I'm going to jump in here on Evan Stewart. Look, I know that you don't agree. I think Elijah Surratt was productive, and I think that he is a really good college player. He was really good at JMU before he transferred to Indiana. He has been playing college football for a long time and has been productive for a while. I just don't think that he has the same level of upside because he's been playing to his ceiling for most of his career, which is projecting to be a day 3 draft pick and a guy that has 1,000 yards receiving in college. I know that you have pause when we're talking about Evan Stewart because his production has kind of stayed the same and he's been a little bit inconsistently healthy.
Ain't kinda. There's no kinda.
He is the most physically gifted. He was the most physically gifted receiver at Oregon this past year. He is a very, very good and explosive athlete. Now that Tez Johnson's gone, I think that they're going to call on Evan Stewart to do a lot of the things that Troy Franklin did and Tez Johnson did over the past 2 seasons. And he is going to have a huge jump in his production. There's a reason why he at one point was a former 5-star recruit.
So we've been doing a lot of projections in reference to these lists. And I'm going to be honest, I kind of finally said enough. And now I hate that it happened for Evan Stewart in this regard. One kid has had an extra year to show what he's got at a better school. Right? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be rude here. I know A&M, the first 2 years, the wheels kind of fell off. I mean, look, he's made some freakish plays. I mean, he made a really good play against Ohio State in the first matchup, was a non-factor in the second one. Complete non-factor, and everybody was a non-factor. That's not just on him. But, Joe, one kid had 1,000 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. Evan Stewart had 613 and 5. So I do think, and I'm going to say this, I'm not taking a shot. My heart, I'm not taking a shot here at you or anybody. There comes a part where I look at this list and say to myself, I'm not looking at Evan Stewart as a draft prospect. I'm looking at the production based off of a guy almost having 1,000 yards and another one not, and constantly not. I've seen Evan Stewart miss games. Like, I look at the A&M game or A&M season the year before he transferred. He played in 8 games. He quit on his team. Okay, he got hurt, or he said he got hurt. Okay, then I look at last year, and he was still banged up later down the stretch. I don't know what I'm going to get from him, Joe. I don't. Now, could you be 1,000% right and him be the second best wide receiver in the Big Ten? Yes, I do think you could be right. He is that gifted. But, Joe, in the bigger moments that I felt like Oregon needed him to show up, he wasn't there. He was a non-factor in most of that. That's not just, I mean, the Ohio State game, he had the fade touchdown.
Right. I was going to say that was a huge game that he had against Ohio State.
Penn State and Ohio State round 2, then what? So I have, let's see, 13. I have 31 games of him being a number one guy in one situation.
Wait. He didn't play in the playoffs. So what was his injury
again?
status?
So being a again, which solidifies the point of being a non-factor.
Okay, I understand this. He's a slighter frame receiver. He's listed at 175 pounds. He's on the lighter side. So like his inability to stay healthy is absolutely a problem. But I think that when the lights come on and we need Evan Stewart to play his biggest games, he has done that. He did it against Wisconsin when they were playing in a close game and they were trailing.
That's a big game under the lights?
No. Well, it was quite literally under the lights, but that was a close game where the entirety of that game, everybody was saying, oh my God, is Oregon going to get upset? Are they going to lose this game? And he still finished with 92 yards, and he was a big reason for them winning that football game. The Ohio State game that we just referenced, where he had 149 receiving yards and he cooked Denzel Burke the entirety of the game, he dominated. I can see why there's apprehension. I can see why his lack of like full-time availability and him having a couple of dud games. I totally get that. But having one extra year within Oregon's offensive system and having one more year to take that step forward, and for Will Stein to be able to work with him for one more year allows for him to take that step. I will project until the end of the earth. I will always project and bank on talent. I hate just picking guys because they had good college production. So that's kind of where the
college production. It's also what you get with guys like Will Howard, who wins national championships, and also would get you guys and Stetson Bennett.
Because I like to look. I don't think it takes away from acknowledging accomplishments. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging accomplishments. But if I'm sitting here and evaluating, like if I'm comparing two players, whenever I do a ranking, it's based on who's the better player.
All right, well, let me get to this. Athlete. Let me get to this. He had 149 yards in round 1 versus Ohio State. If the other 12 games that Evan Stewart had, he averaged 38 receiving yards a game, 38.66 to be exact. So, okay, he shows up for a game that you really needed him in. Joe, he has another big game against Wisconsin. That means the other 10 games that he's playing, he is a non-factor. Consistency has been an issue here. The theme that I'm trying to preach has been consistency. Joe, if I told you, one big game, you take the big game away, which you can't do, and I hate this argument. But the consistency factor, to my point here, 38 yards a game is not a guy that I can put at number 3 on my list.
he had a lot more challenging matchups compared to Surratt, who, if we look at his performances against the biggest teams they've played, Ohio State, he had 40 yards. Washington, the best secondary in the country this past year, he had 12 yards. Most of his production was carried off of games against Western Illinois, Maryland, Northwestern, and Purdue.
Sounds like a Notre Dame schedule.
Well, they had an easy schedule.
I could do that to Jeremiah Love, right? Like I could do that to other kids around the country. But what I'm saying is you're putting them at number 3. Surratt did
I'd rather have Evan Stewart than Elijah Surratt. I think Elijah Surratt.
Well, it's a 50-50 chance that he's going to be there.
I think that he wasn't challenged very often. I think that that's really the real takeaway here. I think he's a fine player. I think has done some nice things at Indiana. In
fairness, Indiana gave up 5 sacks to Ohio State in the first half. Nobody was throwing the football. Curtis Rourke couldn't complete a pass. If his grandmother was in the hospital and they told him to complete a pass, and she'd be saved. Like, I mean, let's not act as if that it was all on him that he had that less of production.
Yeah, but he's their number 1 receiver, and all the time when we talked about that game, and one of the biggest criticisms that we had is none of the receivers were getting open, and lo and behold, Elijah Surratt was not getting open.
What was this? What was his stat line versus Notre Dame? I'm serious. I'm seriously asking. I'm not joking.
4 for 67. So he did.
Was he the one that had the touchdown at the end to make the game interesting?
No, that was not him.
Okay. He's still better than Evan Stewart. All right, number 4. You have Jonah Coleman, the Washington running back. And at number 4, I have Mekhi Hughes, the Tulane transfer, going to Oregon.
Dude, I love Jonah Coleman. I just got to sit here and gush about this kid. He's 5'9". He was listed at 229 this past year. Washington, or I think it was he, posted pictures of him after their winter conditioning program. And he went from he quite literally was fat. Like he posted a picture and he was like, look at all the weight that I lost. He went from being extremely chubby and just being a bowling ball. He is jacked right now. Last year, he rushed for 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 5.5 yards per carry. They leaned on him a ton. I think that this upcoming season, Washington's going to be a lot better. I can't wait for us to do that preview when May comes around and we start doing previews. Jonah Coleman is going to finish as one of the best running backs in the country. I think that kid is going to be a super, super dominant.
Look, I'll give you this in reference to Coleman. He was one of the biggest slept-on players in the entire Big Ten that nobody wanted to talk about. You're right about the 1,000 yards. The big thing is, of the 10 touchdowns he had, 7 of them came in the red zone. By the way, 5 of them came within the 2-yard line. So you want to talk about being physical in the Big Ten? Per ESPN splits. This kid absolutely dominated in the red zone. That means he's a physical back and will run downhill. I didn't see the picture. I'll have to go find it. The difference for me and why I didn't go him and I went Mekhi Hughes is basically I think I'm getting a more explosive running back with Hughes versus Coleman. Now, I love a really good physical back. I don't think you go wrong with either one of them. Coleman on this split here, the 5.5 yards per carry, Joe, was one of the tops in the Big Ten, and nobody talked about.
Yeah, by the way, I just texted you the picture to your phone if you want to pull it up. But you don't have to pull it up on the broadcast, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, he looks completely different in a 4-month span.
Oh, this dude had from a full dad bod to looking like he's on TRT.
He went from Eddie Lacy to Trent Richardson. That's how he
I would love to know if they bulked him up on purpose like that to then cut him down for spring.
They might have. That's possible. I mean, that's good. That's a good strength coach. If they did that on purpose, they asked him to add a little bit more weight to add some.
Bro, my dude's got a beer belly, dog.
But I'm so serious that I think that kid, how he looks now, is going to. And you just talk about him kicking ass in short areas. Yeah, I'm not asking him to burn anybody. I know, though, that he looks even more jacked than he was before, that he's going to kill dudes. Mekhi Hughes, though, I think is a good player.
All these running backs have massive traps, dude. Like, it's like a Bane movie versus Batman.
It's the weirdest thing. And I don't know if that's just built up from playing high school football and getting hit in the neck so much. Like, I don't know what that is. Hughes, though, I think is a good player. I just have a tiny bit of pause on, does the production at Tulane, does it translate? which is what we talked about last night with Ahmad Hardy.
That explosion translates. What he did against SEC opponents with a two-lane offensive line translates. It's not like Oklahoma defensively sucked. Brother, he's catching the edge on against the SEC and the Big 12. Here's the thing. Here's the problem that I have with Hughes. Joe, my man's got 2 years, and he's almost got over 500 carries. That's a lot. It's a lot of tread on them tires. But he's explosive as shit, though.
To have to jump to the Big Ten after having that many carries underneath your belt, it's a lot. It is absolutely a lot to have to deal with. You're going to have to enter a lot of situations where he's going to need to be physical. Now, I will say, knowing the production that they got out of two like shifty running backs that they had before, Bucky Irving and Jordan James, I think that Mekhi Hughes is the perfect fit. Like this was one of those ones that we talked about and so many people talked about that when he committed, it was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. He couldn't have landed in a better spot. Yeah,
it was a massive pickup. And listen, we just got done talking about Evan Stewart. If we're going to talk about Mekhi Hughes, the explosiveness of what they have with adding guys like DeCorian Moore, by the way, who I think who's in spring football, who will be there, who I think will be in and of itself, I think can arguably push for being that number one overall receiver, not just being a contributor. Joe, what's interesting here is I go back to, I still think, look, here's what I do think translates. I know that he can be a workhorse because he was a workhorse against SEC opponents and other opponents. I've seen him have explosive plays. He can catch out of the backfield. He had two ridiculous touchdowns receiving the ball. I do think Will Stein is going to find interesting ways to get him the ball. The one worry that I do have here, though, I know that they went out in the portal and got a tackle and whirled, and you got a lot that you're trying to replace there. And down the stretch, I don't think that you could run the football as effectively as maybe you wanted to. But I think he just brings such a different dynamic that I think that he for what it's worth, can be more, I don't want to say productive. He can have more impact. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him, but we'll see, man. I've seen the kid play a lot. I think he's just really overall really well, really good.
Hopefully they don't run him into the ground, though. That's always what's just kind of hard to project.
500 carries in 2 years, Joe. That's a lot.
I would actually kind of love to, I don't have the time to do this, but like I would be really curious to dig into running backs who have over, like, let's say 350, 400 carries that transferred and what their success has been. The only guy that I can think of that maybe had
Cody
success.
Schrader.
Well, Cody Schrader comes to mind. That was one that popped in my head. The other one was Quinshon Judkins had a ton of carries, and his carries dropped significantly because he didn't touch the ball as much. So I wonder, is the thought process that him and Noah Whittington are going to split carries, or is the idea that they want Hughes to step in right away and to get a shitload of touches?
Noel, we keep talking about Mizzou. Shit, they're really good at evaluating running. Noel came from App State. I mean, went right into the SEC and it translated. Shoot, I'm trying to think. I feel like we're forgetting somebody big here.
We definitely are. There's probably something that's completely on the nose that we're just not even considering, that was like a guy had a shitload of touches where he was the year before.
Well, he went from SEC to SEC here, but the first one that came to my mind was Rocket Sanders, if I'm being honest.
Well,
but it's not the same. It's not the same comp. But you're talking about a guy who had a shitload of workload, okay, who dropped some pounds, went somewhere else, had the same amount of workload, and he just was absolutely ridiculous last year. Cody Schrader could be one. Noel could be one. Judkins, to your point, could be one.
God, it's just it's tough to lean in that.
Montrell Johnson at Florida. He goes from ULL to Florida and was there. I mean, split carries with Etienne, but when he was in there,
but he was splitting carries though. So like he also was inconsistently available.
Well,
and Rocket Sanders is another guy who was inconsistently available. So it kind of plays to what we're talking about here, where buying into a running back that has a lot of touches sometimes merits in a lack of availability.
It's very true. I mean, we're spitballing ideas here. That's very true.
Right.
You're making me want to go create a running back on College Football 25 and just start murking dudes. Which, by the way, the San Diego Padres is where Ben Ruffino, the 6'4" first baseman, 230 pounds, is playing. Speaking of playing video games, where are you at in the show?
I got drafted already. I'm in AAA. I'm probably about to get called up. Your first baseman is a lot smaller than mine is. Mine is 6'8", 270 pounds.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, I completely went as meathead as possible with it. My guy's huge.
Is he right-handed? Does he hit right or left?
Right. He's right-handed.
Okay. You need to go to the animation of hitting. Go to Tommy White on animation of hitting. You're welcome. It's like taking a massive crow hop into a baseball and you just hit nukes.
All right, I'm gonna take a look at that. I need that. I implore you, by the way, text Sean and ask Sean how I play MLB The Show, and you're gonna lose respect for me when you find out how.
Well, how do you do it? Just tell me.
I don't know. I don't know how to play baseball, so I don't know how to read pitches, so I just swing at everything.
What you need to do is go to start off at amateur, then go up to minors, and then go up to rookie.
I'm already on I don't play on that high of a difficulty. I play on rookie. So I keep it low as is because I don't.
Minors is about the same. Go down to minors. They just throw more strikes for you and you can hit the ball. It's a video game. You're there to have fun.
I'm not trying to challenge myself, but my point is I don't know how to read pitches. I don't know how to do any of that, nor do I care to learn.
Just got to be really good at baseball. We're hitting 562 right now, if anyone's wondering.
That's insane.
Ben Ruffino is going to be the first ballot best baseball player of all time. All right.
Okay.
Last one here, Joe, on our list. Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, the second Ohio State player that's on this list. Of course, it's a wide receiver from Ohio State. But both of us have Carnell Tate at number 5 coming in here.
Carnell Tate, I always kind of wondered, how good could he be if he wasn't so far down on the pecking order? So his first year when he was a freshman, he comes in highly recruited kid. It's Emeka Egbuka and it's Marvin Harrison Jr. And then this past year, it's despite Egbuka being hurt, it was Emeka Egbuka and it was Jeremiah Smith. Now is his chance to emerge. There was speculation that he was getting offered all this money to leave, and I think he realizes this is his best opportunity to shine, especially in a situation where he's playing off of the best player in the country. He's going to get a lot of one-on-one situations. And we actually started to see during the playoff him getting one-on-one situations because of that attention that was given him, especially in the Texas game. I think he just needs to be a little more consistent. I think back to the one bad drop that he had where he had a touchdown in his hands against Texas that he's got to come down with. If he takes a step forward, this is a no-brainer pick. But he's got to take that stride and start to establish more consistent dominance.
I don't think his production or the lack of anything is bad considering the fact that he was their probably 5th option.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, he still had 733 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't think the question is if he can be a number 2. The question is for Carnell Tate is can he take over games so that teams don't keep doubling Jeremiah Smith? You bring up Texas. What did Texas do? We will not allow him to catch a pass tonight. Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, have at it. Have at it. We don't care. Have at it. Jeremiah Smith will not beat us. We saw the glimpses against Texas that Carnell Tate can be that guy if he continues to make the catches in high leverage situations. But here is an outright, not truth, but fact. That there will be teams that will double Jeremiah Smith until the Crows come home. That will happen every single week as long as things happen. Like, Joe, there was a coaches clinic at LSU this weekend. I know for a fact that the Jeremiah Texas film got brought up. How do I know? Well, I saw it. What they're walking through there is how do you take away a number 1 wide receiver like that without playing on the line of scrimmage, without playing man-to-man? And it's basically just putting a big-ass domino on him and taking him away. They're already studying that. When you're talking about a coach's clinic in Louisiana, when coaches aren't going to even face him, they're already going over that at a coach's clinic. The last thing I'd say here on Carnell Tate if he has high production early, it will elevate everybody in that entire room.
Yes.
That's the part where here's a hot take. You ready? Carnell Tate early in the season is more important than Jeremiah Smith because teams down the stretch of how they play them will be determined based off of how good Carnell Tate will be for this team.
If teams realize that they can double team and bracket coverage, it's on film already. If they can bracket coverage like they did, Texas did, if they realize they can do that and not have to worry about Carnell Tate, Ohio State's offense is going to be in trouble. Now, I have faith, and I think that Carnell Tate is going to step up to the occasion. I think you bring up a really good talking point for him here. He is going to have a lot to prove, and he's going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he's going to have a lot of opportunities to shine. But he needs to take advantage of what's being given to him, which is the fact that he needs to start putting together 100-yard, 120-yard receiving games here and there because of so much desperation to slow down Jeremiah Smith that opposing defenses are going to have. He gets the chance to boost his notoriety, his draft stock, his overall recognition in the college game. I think that we're projecting a little bit here, and I think a lot of people do appreciate that Carnell Tate is a good player and is a former 5-star. But if he's able to accomplish what we're projecting, he's going to have one of the best seasons in the country at receiver, and it could be similar, very similar to what happened 2 years ago when Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka both had tremendously productive seasons, and back to the days of Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson when they were all playing together.
Who does Ohio State play week 1?
Texas. No. Wait, it's Texas, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Texas.
yeah.
I forgot that we have that matchup. I can't wait to preview that.
Again. Do you truly believe that they're not going to replicate what had success for them last year on Jeremiah Smith? You're an idiot if you think that they won't.
They're going to do the same exact shit.
They will do a lot of the same exact shit. I mean, that's the part for me, Joe, that I look at this and say, again, that's why I brought up the coaches clinic thing. And that because I wouldn't have transitioned into this last. Game 1, August the 30th in Columbus, Ohio, Texas versus Ohio State. Oh, boy, that felt good because I felt like we were doing a game preview. But the actual truth here is he is, and that's why I said early in the season, if you go in a game versus Texas and you double team him and Carnell Tate is your leading receiver, and yes, I mean that, leading receiver, or not even leading, but has 80 to 100 yards. Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, Michigan. What are you going to do now? Because you can't double team Smith. All of that is going to be the biggest thing for them in the passing game. And by the way, you have 2 now true starting quarterbacks, Julian Sayin and Arch Manning. Talk about having yourself an opening week 1, big dog.
Dude, I couldn't be more excited. I know that we're closing out the show here, but I want to start previews for week 1 as early as possible, because I'm getting excited thinking about this. This is getting me juiced up.
Well, and see, here's the thing. You're high on Texas. You're higher on Texas than I am.
Right.
So if you stay with that, that means that you think that they're going into Columbus and winning.
Yes. Exactly. Correct.
Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. You can do that. I'm not doing that. I will make my pick when I'm told I need to make my pick. I'm not doing that. It's going to end in a tie.
That's soft. Pick a team.
It is. I'm not picking. You know what I'm not doing? I'm not picking it on March 24th. I'll tell you that right now.
That's fair. I won't push you there.
See you again on Wednesday. Y'all have a good night, man. Peace.